water over the back cowling of the car. Sneva seems to be very patient in the cockpit. The engine dies. So frantic activity in the pit area of the George Vignotti Dan Cotter team. Sneva's car is now down off the jacks, and he will be climbing out. So within the same lap, both Sneva and teammate Kevin Kogan will fall by the wayside.
All right, Gary, nice description of the activity down there in the pit area. Kevin Kogan was running in the top 6. In fact, he was the last car on the lead lap. However, he is in the pits now and has apparently dropped out of competition. The leader continues to be Rick Mears, and Bobby Rahal still running second. We hope to be able to get a word with Tom Sneva after we pause for these messages. Michigan International Speedway. Stay with us. Between Mario Andretti and Teo Fabi, the interval stretches out just a little bit, but less than a half a lap ago, these guys were going at it tooth and nail. Here's how they came into turn number 1.
That's Teo on the inside and Mario on the outside. Remember Tom Sneva's comments about how rough it is down in the bottom. You can just barely see that car popping around a little bit, Teo's car, and you see the courtesy room that Mario gave Teo. Teo, not much experience on a racetrack like this, but that was sure a fine job.
Well, unfortunately, the driver with whom we had established radio communication lasted just a little less than half of this race. Of course, we're referring to Tom Sneva, and he's with Gary Lee.
Tom, you gave us some thrills on the racetrack, but you also gave yourself and us some thrills in the pit area. What happened?
Well, you know, I don't know, we developed some kind of leak, and then I didn't have any rear brakes or something, so it was a little hard getting in and out of the pits, but car was working great. You know, the Texaco Star was fine on the racetrack. You know, we virtually run the thing flat out. We were just biding time. Rahal was quick early, but I think we were a little quicker in the corner. We were just a little short down the straightaway, and I think as the track got greasy, we would have closed in on Bobby.
There was some frantic activity around the rear of the car, but you were so calm in the cockpit. Were you aware there was some type of oil fire back there?
Well, I could see we were leaking a lot of oil, and I was just hoping we could solve the problem, you know, before it got more serious.
So to win, you have to go the distance, and not Tom Sneva's day.
Not the Texaco Star day, but there'll be other days for the Star.
Tom Sneva, now spectator.
All right, and on the racetrack, John Paul Jr., car number 12, the red car, is ahead of Mario Andretti as they go into turn number 1.
He just passed Mario through the tri-oval a lap ago. Now, John Paul somehow, in the scramble of the pit stops between laps 30 and 35, came up a lap short. Kart scoring is showing John Paul Jr. 1 lap down to the 5 cars that are on the lead lap. Remember that John Paul won the last time they were here.
And at about the same time that Tom Sneva dropped out of the race, so did his teammate, Kevin Kogan.
With all the activity around your teammate, no one expected to see what happened in front of the team car, and that's when you came in. What happened?
Well, the motor was tightening up. Ever since we made that stop, it just started pulling less and less and less RPMs. It was going to blow any second, so I just pulled it in.
No sense in breaking it all together.
What's that? Yeah, right, no sense.
So both team cars out of the race.
Kevin Kogan retires from competition, but John Paul Jr. still out there, although he is being shown as a lap down, running in 6th position. Leader continues to be Rick Mears, driving car number 1. 2nd place, Bobby Rahal. 3rd is Teo Fabi. 4th, Mario Andretti. And 5th, Alan Unser Sr. Those 5 cars on the lead lap. A lap down, John Paul Jr. The number 99 of Jeff Brabham, also Chip Ganassi, shown as a lap down. Average speed of the race is 175.09 miles an hour. They'll be picking that up now because we have been under green for the last few laps. Well, we had an opportunity to talk to John Paul Jr. He, of course, comes from road racing experience, and we asked him about the comparison between the two.
What type of conditioning had to go on inside John Paul Jr.'s mind to make the move from the road course to the oval?
It's totally different. On a road course, you come up to a corner and you brake and shift down through the gears, turn in and get back on the throttle, whereas here you go at least a third of the way into the corner before you ever lift off the gas. And that was really the main thing, just getting to the point where you keep your foot on the floor.
Bob, he indicated to us that even at this point, after the 500-mile victory earlier in the year, he's just a little bit apprehensive running here, although certainly not enough to slow him down. You have to kind of keep in your mind and be aware of the consequences and respect it. You know, he's brought a lot of new things to IndyCar racing, even his uniform. His uniform is produced by a company called Bass Uniforms. He's a New York tailor who would like to break into Indianapolis car racing. Now, there's our leader. And Gordy Johncock, an interesting story.
Yes, I think so. Rick wasn't running all that well the first part of the race, but when they come in for the pit stop, they must have made some kind of adjustments. You know, they had communications back and forth on the radio, and Rick must have asked for some adjustments, and now he's running out in front, and he's giving Rahal a rough time, where at the first part of the race, he couldn't stay anywhere near Rahal.
Rick Mears, of course, a three-time CART PVG IndyCar World Series champion in '79, '81, and '82. However, this year hasn't been all that great for him, although he is in 4th position in the CART standings at this time. His best finishes this year: a 3rd place at Indianapolis, a 3rd at Milwaukee, and also a 3rd at the Pocono 500. He finished 4th at the Michigan 500 here earlier this year, and of course, you remember he was battling with John Paul Jr. into turn number 3 on the final lap when Rick lost control or something broke on the car, sending him into the retaining wall.
Well, Bob, last night you and I ran into Rick and his former teammate Kevin Cogan at dinner. They were dining together, and I was kidding Rick, saying that, gee, you really ought to have him covered, Rick, because the PC-10, and this is last year's car they're running here this week at Michigan, ought to know its way around this racetrack without you even driving it. Well, he said, I don't know that we're exuding that much confidence, and he bristled a little bit, but I'll tell you, the 10 looks pretty good right now, and things are looking good for Rick.
62 laps have been completed. Let's review the top 8 positions for you. Rick Mears, the leader. Bobby Rahal, 2nd. Teo Fabi, 3rd. Mario Andretti, 4th. 5th place, Al Unser Sr., then John Paul Jr. 7th is Jeff Brabham, and in 8th position, Chip Ganassi. All the action Saturday, September 24th, beginning at 7:30 Eastern Time and 4:30 Pacific Time from the Ice World in Totowa, New Jersey. Jim Simpson and Al Bernstein bringing you all the excitement of Saturday night at the fights. We are at Michigan International Speedway this afternoon for running of the Detroit News 200. You know, earlier we asked the drivers what or who they were afraid of. Well, a little bit different angle this week. We asked them, who is your hero?
Al Unser, your hero.
My hero? Well, I would probably say the President of the United States, because I wouldn't want to be in his shoes.
Well, I've always admired politicians that can stand up to really high public stress, and I think somebody like Kennedy I admired a lot when I was a kid.
Well, I don't know. I enjoy a good laugh once in a while. It's kind of hard to make me laugh, and probably Walter Matthau. I think anytime that guy doesn't have to do anything, all I got to do is look at him, and he cracks me up. So.
I've got 3 of them. They're Magic Johnson, Rocky and Bullwinkle, and Larry Newber.
Actually, Larry Newber is one of my Jonathan Winters.
Who's your hero?
You are.
What we did not see was the gun that Larry Newber was holding to the guys' heads.
Now, wait a minute. I think it's only fair to point out that I am undefeated in media races.
After 1 race.
Well, 1 for 1 is undefeated. I also think it speaks well for the power of that microphone, doesn't it?
On the racetrack, a good race out here between Pete Halsmer and Tony Bettenhausen. Pete Halsmer showing the way there in that red number 66. Right behind him, Tony Bettenhausen Jr. And the leader, Rick Mears, comes into the pit. So does 2nd place Bobby Rahal. So the last of 2 pit stops being made here on the 68th lap. Both of the Penske cars are in. Behind Rick Mears, who we are watching right now, is his teammate Al Unser Sr. Work also being done on the Bobby Rahal car just in front of Rick Mears. A good stop for Rick, 16.5 seconds, and he's back out on the racetrack. Work still being done on the Bobby Rahal car. Now he moves out, and so they're going to fall into position just about the way they were before they came in for their stop.
Well, you take 68 laps out of a 100-lap race, figuring that you've got to go at least a third of the distance each time. It looks like Rick Mears is in pretty good shape. A very routine pit stop. Rick Mears is in and out. Both of his stops are complete, and now he has just 31 laps to go, and he's gone that distance at least once already today.
All right, Tony Bettenhausen did make the pass on Pete Halsmer down the backstretch as we were watching the Rick Mears pit stop, and Tony moves into 8th position. Nice move there on the low side of the racetrack in turn 3 by Tony.
Well, for Pete Halsmer, he's very happy to still be on the racetrack at this point in the race. They've had a lot of hard luck lately.
Yes, and if you notice on the pit stops again, Rick Mears got a big jump on Ray Hall. Ray Hall had a slow pit stop again for the second time in a row, and Mears is way out in front of him now, where they were only just a second or two apart. But he's got a big advantage on him now, and a long ways to go to catch him in 30 laps.
Gordy, don't you think that Ray Hall must have a gearbox or perhaps some type of shift linkage problem? It's pretty unlikely that Bobby would have that much trouble 2 consecutive stops.
Well, it's possible unless the engine's not tuned just right. If your engine's not tuned just right and it lugs down to start with, you can have a serious problem getting out of there. And he's had some kind of problem today doing that every time.
On the racetrack, a battle for second position here. Mario Andretti and Rick Mears. Now, the leader of the race at this point is Teo Fabi, but he has not made the pit stop. There is Rick Mears going to the low side of the racetrack and moving into second position, passing Mario Andretti.
Both Andretti and Fabi yet to make that second pit stop, and no, nobody can go the distance. In case you're home and watching, maybe this is one of the first IndyCar races you've seen. These cars normally can go 70 to 80 miles. This was a 200-mile race. They can go 70 to 80 miles on a full load of fuel. And now we see Teo Fabi, the fabulous, fabled Fabi, rumbling down pit road.
So Teo makes his second and final pit stop of the afternoon, rolls that Skoal Bandit to a stop. The pit crew goes to work on it. They're going to be changing rubber, it looks like, on the right rear of the car, and looks like on the right front also, and the left rear also being changed, fuel being put in. Teo Fabi won at Mid-Ohio and also won the 500-mile race at Pocono International Raceway earlier this year. Going to be a not particularly good stop. It's going to be a 22.5-second stop, about 5 seconds more than it took Rick Mears to make his final stop.
How nice, though, this year has been for the Forsythe racing team. You know, they came to IndyCar racing last year. They had Hector Frabake, the Mexican, as their driver for a while. Matter of fact, he won a race on a road course, and Danny Sullivan performed so well early in the season. It's a well-organized team. There are some very fine folks on a personal level involved with the Forsythe racing team, and a lot of people are happy with their success.
So that moves Rick Mears into the lead once again, with Mario Andretti second and Bobby Rahal now in third position. Let's go to the pits for a comment from Gary Lee.
To address a problem that, Gordy, you alluded to, yes, there is a situation developing in the Red Roof Inn car number 2 with Bobby Rahal. He is leaving the pit slowly because of a clutch that is slipping. So indeed there is a problem at the exit of the pit for Bobby Rahal.
Well, yes, you could definitely tell there was a problem because of the way he was getting out, and it could very well have cost him the race.
26 laps to go. 74 have been completed. There's Bobby Rahal on the racetrack, still running in third position. He's shown as about 10.5 seconds behind the leader, Rick Mears. Now, Rick Mears, this is pretty much his home racetrack and drives here quite a bit. Gordy, does that give him a decided advantage over the other drivers?
Well, I don't think so. Not on a big racetrack like this. It would give a guy more advantage like Bobby Rahal at Mid-Ohio, really, on a road course. It takes a little more to learn a road course, I believe, than it does a place like at Michigan International here, because this is a pretty well flat-out racetrack. Your car's working well. You stay on the throttle and you go.
3 cars are on the lead lap, namely Rick Mears, Mario Andretti, and Bobby Rahal. Chip Ganassi, the driver of car number 20, is shown in 7th position right now, and those are the Gordon Johncock colors out there, as a matter of fact.
Well, the colors look good, but I wish I was right there behind the wheel. Chip's been running a real steady race today. He hasn't been running all that quick, but he's had some good pit stops, running a good steady race, and if he stays together, he'll be well up there in the top 5, 6, 7, I believe so.
Now running in 7th position out on the racetrack, and Chip, of course, from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Last year here at this particular race, he started 17th and finished 16th, and in the Michigan 500 earlier this year, he started in 12th place and wound up in 8th position.
Well, his best finish so far this year has been that 8th finishing position at Michigan. He really expected to only run about 5 or 6 races this year, but he's really been the only element of success, at least on a continuous basis, that Pat Patrick's racing team has had this year. It's been a pretty good season for Chip Ganassi. He currently ranks 20th in the point standings, and he is on his way to winning over $100,000. Chip has won $93,000 so far. And it looks like well over 25 competitors as we look at Mario Andretti, who's been among the top 3 all afternoon. Looks like well over 20, maybe as many as 30 competitors will win over $100,000 this year in the Car PPG World Series for Indy cars.
Mario Andretti was running in 2nd position, is in the pits for a stop. His second and final stop of the afternoon. The time Timex timer keeps clicking off, and at about 21.4 seconds, the clock stops, and Mario Andretti moves back out onto the racetrack.
I'll tell you, Gordy, if they ever run a 220-mile race, this guy's going to win it hands down.
It looks like it by the fuel mileage is getting. But I might have one comment. If you want to know what a true pit stop is, you know, you time the driver from the time he goes by the start-finish line till he comes around and stops, till he leaves his pits, goes around and comes back again. The only thing they're timing actually is what the pit crew itself doing, not what the driver's doing.
That's very true. The time can be won and lost in that interval between slowing down and getting back up to speed.
And obviously the point being that a more experienced veteran driver can judge it perhaps a little more closely than what one of the younger drivers can. Stay on the accelerator to the last possible second, duck into the pits, make good time, safe time going down pit row, and also accelerate quickly.
Yeah, that's very true. I sat up here today high where I could watch this pit action, and I've seen a lot of them that could have come in the pits and got out a lot faster than they've been doing it. They've lost a lot of time, but I'm not going to tell them that secret.
Well, because of that pit stop, Mario Andretti now falls a lap down, so only 2 cars now in the lead lap as we look at the point standings in the Kart PPG IndyCar World Series for 1983. Al Unser Sr. is still the leader with 115 points. Teo Fabi is second with 88. Tom Sneva third with 82 points. Then Rick Mears with 71, and Mario Andretti fifth in the point standings with 68. Sixth, Bobby Rahal with 67 points. Al Unser Jr. has 66. Then John Paul Jr. with 59. Pancho Carter with 42. Mike Mosley is 10th in the point standings with 34.
And you get 24 wins, so you can see how Tom Sneva's dropping out today was a big blow to his hopes for the championship. It keeps shaking down. We've had this feeling all year that it's going to come down to be between Al Unser Sr. and Teo Fabi, although if Rick Mears' performance here today is any indication, maybe he can creep back up there. Bob, you know, there's also something about this particular race, the fall race here at Michigan International Speedway, that has been intriguing. In the year since 1968, they have run this race. Nobody has ever repeated. It's not that the attrition has been that high. It's just been something about this race that's been very competitive in most years. There have been just enough new faces to come along, and in all the years going back to 1968, when Ronnie Bucknam won the Memorial race, and by the way, in 1973, Bill Vukovich Jr. won his one and only Indianapolis-type car race. There has never been a repeat winner. 12 races, 12 faces, if you will, in the tradition of Talladega. Some of the people who have not won this race, Mike Mosley, John Paul Jr., and Al Unser Jr. Of course, Teo Fabi, his rookie year on the trail. He's never won one here, nor has Kevin Kogan or Pancho Carter.
Rick Mears continues to set the pace here at Michigan International Speedway, and Championship Auto Racing Teams and ESPN present a track fact.
They say that necessity is the mother of invention, and certainly Indianapolis teams are always coming up with some invention to make their race car go just a little faster, and sometimes to help their driver. Now, believe it or not, I'm holding one of those inventions. We have seen drivers on a high-bank racetrack compensating for the G-forces with those tether straps around their shoulder. The helmets sometimes lean a little bit to the left. Well, this team has invented a little metal device that's heavily padded, allowing this driver, Tony Bettenhausen, to rest his head against here, so that no matter how long the race on a high-bank racetrack, this driver never strains as far as the neck.
The rains we had here earlier at Michigan did not keep the crowd away. They are here in full to enjoy the Detroit News Grand Prix, and ESPN's coverage of the race continues after these messages. From Michigan International Speedway near Brooklyn, Michigan, of the Detroit News Grand Prix, a 200-mile race for Indy cars. The last time that Rick Mears won a race for Indy cars was in August 29th of 1982 at Riverside, California. He is 0 for 12, but looking for victory here this afternoon. He has a 10-second lead on Bobby Rahal with only 15 laps to go.
And if he were to win today, Gordy, what would that make us? Our 8th different winner on the trail in 1983?
8th or 9th, one or the other.
8th winner, right, in 10 races.
There's only been 2 of them that's doubled up all year long. Fabi and Sneva.
So Rick Mears with a rather commanding lead on Bobby. We've been watching Bobby on the racetrack, and he certainly is not running nearly as strong as he did at the start of the race.
No, he's slowing down. There's something wrong with him because Chip and the STP car, they were just together there, and Chip is running away from him right now. So Bobby's definitely having some kind of problem.
Rick Mears going to the inside of Scott Brayton there in turn number 3, going low on the racetrack. And Mears continues the tri-oval. That's the completion of lap number 88. So only 12 laps to go and only 2 cars on the lead lap. The average speed of the race with only 1 yellow period. That for a spin involving Jose Legarza, 180.05 miles an hour.
And Mears and Rahal have really put it to the rest of the field in the last 20 green flag laps that we had. And I tell you something, Gordy, I think your track record is in jeopardy. But Mears and Rahal now have a lap on the entire field. Even the 3rd running Teo Fabi and the 4th running Mario Andretti, the 5th running Al Unser Sr., who were at least competitive and in the hunt, so to speak, early on in this race, are now a lap down. So it has funneled down to a Rick Mears, Bobby Rahal race. And I'll tell you something, Gordy, it looks like Rick Mears is in absolute control and command right now.
Well, yes, I definitely think he is. And I don't understand where Teo got a lap down, because he's been running pretty good. The only way that he's got down is slow getting in and out of the pits. I think that's what's really cost him today.
Rick Mears' teammate Al Unser Sr. is running in 5th position, so it's going to be a good finish for the Penske team here if they can retain those positions. There is Al Unser Sr. headed in to the tri-oval in front of us, crossing the start-finish line. Al Unser raising his hand, it looked like, as he went into turn number 1. At any rate, he's running in 5th position at this point.
Well, if you've never been to the Michigan International Speedway, it really is one of the finest racing facilities and a very exciting racetrack. This, as we look at Al Unser Sr., currently ranked number 1 in the PPG Series for 83, also a 3-time winner of the Indianapolis 500. Today is also GE Silicones Day here at the Michigan International Speedway, and the business community has really turned out for this racetrack, particularly in the last couple of years. If you've never been here, we're about midway between the Motor City, Detroit, and I guess you might call it Surreal City, Battle Creek, Michigan, within the southern part of the southern half of the state of Michigan. And it is also very close to one of those beds, one of those routes of the sport of automobile racing. Not too very far from where the guy standing next to me at his early jaunts behind the wheel of a race car, a place called Hastings, Michigan, right, Gordy?
Yes, right. And I live in Coldwater now, and I'm only 40 miles down the road from it. And this Michigan International Speedway is probably the most beautiful racing facilities that we have. Roger Penske and his people has taken over, and they've done one terrific job.
Gary Lee in the pit area, continuing to watch the activity from that location. Gary?
I'm standing right now in the Rick Mears pit, where the last pit stop came on lap 69. Now, his first pit stop came on lap 32. So according to our calculations, he should have enough fuel. However, it may be close because we have gone green virtually all the way. But as it stands right now, we should have enough fuel on board car number 1 to take him to victory lane.
Well, A.J. Foyt has written a very interesting book that will be released soon as we watch Rick Mears, and he makes comments about several of the current drivers on the CART PPG IndyCar World Series. Larry Nuber talked to Al Unser Sr.
Al, this week it was reported from AJ's book that he says you're the most underrated driver, or one of the most underrated. How can you win 3 500-mile races, Indianapolis, and be underrated?
Well, I don't know. I appreciate Foyt's compliments and all that of what he said. It makes me feel good coming from somebody like him. So, but I don't know how I'm underrated.
That goes back to the beginning. That was your first ride at Indianapolis in one of his backup cars, was it not?
That it was. If it wasn't for AJ, I probably wouldn't be where I am today because of that ride. It surprisingly how it opens the doors, and with somebody like him that believes in somebody and gives them a chance, it helped me.
Al Unser Sr. in 5th position and the current leader in the PPG IndyCar World Series point standings. Rick Mears continues to hold the lead. Last year for this particular race, he started on the pole but wound up in 25th position, dropping out early with an engine problem. So Rick Mears is looking for his first win today in 13 races.
As we watch the man who looks like he has this race in hand, not to put a damper on proceedings, but we would like to make a comment about a couple of incidents we heard about through the news media overnight. This, by the way, is Chet Phillip. We'll come back to Chet in just a moment. We'd like to extend our condolences to the Jerry Carl family, whose son, we understand, Jimmy Carl, was killed in a private airplane crash yesterday, and also to Bill Marble of the United States Auto Club. We had an unconfirmed report that came from some pretty good sources, however, that one of his sons, Bill Marble Jr., was fatally injured. As now we look at Al Unser Jr. in the pits. Bill Marble Jr. was fatally injured in the sprint car last night in Indiana. Al Unser Jr. pulling out of the pit area. It's been another frustrating day for this young Charger, a guy who has run up front seemingly every race this year. As a matter of fact, this is the first one in quite some time that he has not been in the top 5. They had a tough weekend, and the weekend never got better, even up to race day.
Well, it certainly can happen that way to you sometimes, Larry. You know, no matter what you do, you can't correct it. There's some races you have that way, just unfortunately it happens.
And the Penske cars here battling on the racetrack. Rick Mears trying to put Al Unser Sr. 2 laps down as those cars move through turn number 4 here in front of the bleachers and the main grandstand. To the inside of the racetrack is Rick Mears. Outside is Al Unser Sr. And it looks like the Rick is going to put Al Sr. 2 laps down now. So the situation is, with 3 laps to go, the leader, Rick Mears, second place, 11.4 seconds behind, is Bobby Rahal. Third, a lap down, is Teo Fabi. Fourth is Mario Andretti. And fifth is Al Unser Sr. We've had a very clean and safe race to this point. A spin by Jose Legarza up in turn number 3, but no damage to the race car or, of course, to the driver. So we set up now for the final 2 laps of this race as Rick Mears crosses the start-finish line, moving around Al Unser Jr. in front of the main grandstand into turn number 1 again. He's 2 laps away from his first win in 12 races.
And prior to today, Rick's best finishes in 1983 were thirds. He had a couple of them back-to-back, one at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and one at Milwaukee. Back-to-back thirds and back-to-back races. As we now look at the attrition list for this afternoon, Chip Meade making one of his rare IndyCar appearances, dropping out early, along with Chris Neifel. Johnny Rutherford, also one of the first cars out of this race after a very optimistic qualifying run, which saw him set on the outside of row number 1.
And the white flag is being displayed to our leader, Rick Mears. He's on his final go-round of this 2-mile racetrack. We'll watch him negotiate the turns in the back stretch here on the final lap. There are a few cars ahead of him, a little bit of traffic to contend with, but that should give him no particular problem as he moves out of turn number 2 down the back stretch to the inside of the slower cars.
He's got to be thinking about last week when he saw Teo in his mirrors and had a problem driving into another mirror, if you will. This was Roger Mears.
Yeah, he might be thinking about him and his brother the last lap last week.
And here he comes off of turn number 4. The checkered flag displayed to Rick Mears from Bakersfield, California, the winner of the Detroit News Grand Prix here at Michigan International Speedway. Rick already with that hand up in the air, saluting the crowd as he goes by. Second place, 11 seconds behind, Bobby Rahal from Dublin, Ohio. Finishing third a lap down will be Teo Fabi and then Mario Andretti. So the Penske crew finally comes through with a victory.
Gordy, have you ever had a drought like that went 10, 15 races? That must be like winning your first IndyCar race when you cut one of those off.
Well, definitely. I've had them that long and longer, and I guess Al Unser, you know, for what, 3 or 4 years here, not very long ago, until he got on the Penske team, went through the same thing. And it gets pretty disappointing, but you got to stay out there and keep plugging away, because if you give up, you know, then your team gives up, and there's just no use. So every race you got to look at it as a new race and give it your best shot.
This was a nice, clean, fast-paced race, just as we had expected. Only 2 cars on the lead lap. It was pretty much a situation where Rick Mears and Bobby Rahal took over and just left everybody else in the dust. Rick Mears moves the car into victory lane, and Gary Lee will be with him to interview him in just a moment. Once again, Rick Mears, the winner of this afternoon's kart race at Michigan, the Detroit News Grand Prix. Victory lane, but today it is Rick Mears in victory lane winning the Detroit News Grand Prix. And the winner's circle interview is brought to you by Castrol Motor Oil, engineered for today's smaller, higher revving engines. Here is Gary Lee.
Rick, first of all, congratulations. We have talked to you before in victory lane. I don't think I have ever seen a bigger grin. It's been a long time coming this season.
Well, I tell you, it has been a long time. I tell you, we're probably running farther back in point stands than we have in the last couple of years, but I tell you what, these guys have worked harder than they've ever worked in their life, and it's all paid off today. They've really busted their butts on the car, and the Pennzoil PC10 was just working beautiful all day long, and they got me in and out. They were just talking about the margin of victory was probably about the margin of how quick our pit stops were over second place, and I got to put it to the guys. They got me in and out of there right when we needed it.
This season for you has been a study in Murphy's Law. If it could go wrong, it would go wrong. And you had to wonder sometime along the line, am I ever going to get back in victory lane?
Well, you know, I wanted that from time to time, but there was really no doubt. With a team like this, you got to be in victory lane every once in a while, and no matter what happens. So, you know, it has been a while coming, but it's all paid off.
But again, it was a sprint race, which meant you had to have good backup in the pit area, and you got it.
Absolutely. Our pits just, like you say, the race can be won or lost in the pits, and I feel we won the race in the pits today. And plus, the Pennzoil car was just working beautiful.
Congratulations, Rick.
Thank you very much.
Rick Mears, winner of today's Championship Auto Racing Teams event from Michigan International Speedway. Well, we're going to take a little break here, and after these messages, we'll have an update from Sports Center, and then we'll be back with live coverage of a 100-kilometer Super V race from Michigan.